Welcome to The Current by TreasureCoast.com, where we discuss interesting people, places, and happenings on Florida's Treasure Coast.
Having a Zoom meeting here, no big deal.
Right.
That's funny. Well, Robin, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it. And like I had mentioned before, a lot of your stuff's come up on my feed lately, and so I wanted to I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation, kind of about who you are, what you got started with Save Martin County, some of the things that you feel are important to Martin County, things you might think residents of Martin County or the Treasure Coast in general should know. But maybe we just start with you telling a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So I started the Save Martin County website, and it actually has an acronym. It's Stewards Advocating for a Viable Environment. That's actually how it started. And it was a result of my lawsuit against the city of Stewart over an improper land use that was assigned because I could not find anybody to tell my story. And so I would spend time with TC Palm or with one of the local news channels or you name it, trying to express what was happening. But I also had some restrictions because it was in the middle of a lawsuit. So it was just a way to help share information more than anything. And it was more cathartic for me than it probably was informative for other people because I just needed to document what was happening. And it was more also, I think, to make people aware because developers and government staffs have a PR company. And as a litigant in a lawsuit fighting a land use change, I don't have a PR company. And so it really became a PR effort to educate people especially in the city, but also in the county about how the process worked. What are the results of the process? Why do you need to be involved? Why do you need to be aware of what's happening? Just any number of things. It really became this all encompassing effort more beyond what my situation was.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that like a lot of things, a lot of that maybe necessity kind of spurs an initiative. It makes it a little bit more organic, maybe puts a little bit more fuel behind it. What in your eyes are the most important issues facing Martin County in general today? I mean, is it still like to you started this based on a land use change? Is that something that you feel is one of the bigger issues facing, or what do you see yourself spending the most amount of time looking into or kind of digging up?
I think that's a great question. I think for me, a lot of it is it's all kind of interconnected. I don't think it's any one exclusive thing anymore. I think there's so much happening and it's by design, right? Like you've got all of these multiple projects coming online for applications. You can't deny them because they don't have a certificate of occupancy. So when you look at something like a traffic study, until somebody's living there and it's approved for somebody to live there, it doesn't count, even though it's already been approved and you know it's coming. So a lot of this for me is not just the land use. It ties into the ethics around the applications that are being done, how much the city or county or village of Indiantown, et cetera, are working with developers to make something happen. We hear a lot of commissioners say, oh, it's property rights. Well, it's only property rights if you give them access to property rights. So if you've got a low density residential project or land that's been assigned, and then you give them permission to basically have 30 units per acre, that is not property rights. And so educating people on what the process is, how to get involved, when to get involved, how to be a part of the process, how to contribute to the conversation, how to ask better questions, how to research these things. It's a lot. It really is. And it does take a lot to find it, but helping people become aware of how to be a better community member, I think is really important. I don't think anybody should be surprised when things happen. And I feel like that's a lot of what's happening is all of a sudden people are like, holy hell, when did this get approved and when did this get built? And then you've got to go, well, starting back 5 years ago, we had this
Right.
whole conversation. And by the time the application gets approved and things get built, it's too late. So just getting people to be a part of the process before it's too late, really, I think has become a major goal of mine.
What do you think is the best way somebody can stay informed? Would it be going to these meetings, or would it be following certain people online? Because I know at this point, I mean, it has kind of gotten to the point where even after something is, let's say something gets approved and there seems to be a lot of confusion. Like people might be upset about one thing, but maybe that is, that's good for the land use code, but then there might be a few variances that were given, and maybe that's something that
Right.
somebody's upset about. And so I think sometimes people get confused, and it gets to be kind of, the issue can be pettifogged. And I guess I'm interested to hear from your point of view, what's the best way for someone to get informed and stay in the know with what's going on.
Yeah, and it is overwhelming. It's a lot, especially if you don't know if it's a city or a county project, because you
Right.
don't know where to start to research. So I think that's probably the first thing, is to know, is it a city project? Is it a county project? Because that will help you determine where to start looking. I do wish Martin County does this a little, though it's a little convoluted to find. The city, it's not as easy to find. But when projects are going through the process, I do wish our municipalities made it easier for people to research permits that are applied for. Or if you have to go to, for example, the South Florida Water Management District to look at a different part of the process, or if you need to go to the DEP to look for a different part of the process, it's very convoluted. And so I do wish it was a little bit easier for people, because you don't want people to feel like they're not being told the whole truth. They may be only given the truth that's applicable to that part of what's happening in your little area, because that's all they're responsible for. So the picture is always much bigger than just the one application anyway. So, because there's a lot to dig through to figure out who's responsible for what, who needs to approve it, which permits involve water. It is a lot for people to take in. And I'm always happy to answer questions. I submit a lot of public records requests on behalf of people, because they don't want their name as part of public record. So I'm happy to do that for people and help them at least find some information that helps them feel a little bit better about what's being decided.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are helpful tips. I think you're right. A lot of times people get confused, and this happens everywhere. Like, I've seen it. I was talking with people up in Vero Beach recently, where they were kind of confused with the city and the county. I mean, it happens definitely in Port St. Lucie. I mean, people sometimes, I run into people who live in the city of Port St. Lucie, and they don't even know they're in the city, until they
Yeah,
look at their tax bill.
right.
And so it's like, I know what you mean. Sometimes, like, you'll pull a permit. Oh, there's no permit for the roof on this house. Oh, well, that's City of Stewart. Okay, we've got to, and they now have
Right.
that online system, which makes it a little easier, to your point. Um, what, what do you see as, like, responsible development, responsible growth, or like a solution to maybe some of the pitfalls that we're experiencing? I mean, because from what you just said, a lot of it might be more bureaucratic. Like, there's 10 different places to look for this knowledge. But I guess if we were just in a fishbowl, how would you look at it? If it was just like Martin County?
Well, so kind of an unfair question, because I feel like the Florida legislature has convoluted some of this.
For sure, especially
So
lately. Yeah.
yeah. And so with the Live Local Act, Senate Bill 102, I feel like an extreme
Mhm.
disservice was done. And if anybody's very frustrated about this, you can thank your elected officials, Overdorf, Snyder, and Harrell, for helping pass this, because what it has done is it has removed the local application oversight for some of these projects. So this came up at the We Care Martin Candidate Forum on Tuesday night
Yeah.
with the county
Right.
commission. And so their creation, this was a gift to developers. It really was. And so any developer who comes in with a certain land use and says, oh, I'm going to build affordable housing under the guise of Live Local, it is a misnomer and it is misleading. So they get greater density, which results in greater profitability for the developer. But I also want to state there, and this was our complaint about this Senate bill when it was initially approved, there is no application process for people like you and me to apply to live there. So a developer says, I'm building quote unquote affordable housing. That's not part of HUD. There's no part of the housing authority with Fort Pierce here locally. It's just a Live Local effort. There's no application, so there's no reporting to the state. There's no requirement for that developer to say, oh, this many people applied and this many people now live in this development that qualify under the adjusted gross income that makes it affordable housing. They don't have to prove anything to the municipality nor to the state of Florida. And so that misnomer, that misnamed Senate bill, is a really unfortunate deal for local residents, because all of these projects are now going to start under the Live Local Act, and it removes the application approval. A commission cannot say no,
Right.
because now it's a state approved effort. And so this goes into that whole convoluted, where do you find this information? You'll still find the application with the municipality, but they can't do anything about it. And so
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
that removal of home rule, trying to keep things local, we should be electing people who know what's best for our community. And again, shame on the people in Tallahassee, because this really did remove a lot of the oversight that we should have here locally across the state of Florida.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up to my question, because you're always going to be at the mercy of externalities, even if there's growth going on in another county. People from Port St. Lucie, if they're coming in to use our beaches, that traffic's going to be there, and the city of Fort Pierce deals with that as well, obviously. And it is interesting, the We Care interview, or the, I guess maybe not a debate that went on. They also brought up like SB 180. And I think that Commissioner Hurd was the one who had mentioned, somebody had brought up the 900 or so units that are going to be built between
Salerno off the Cove and Salerno.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and Commissioner Hurd, I remember she was just like, we didn't, that's not we didn't approve it. There's nothing we could have done. And that was an important part of that video, because I remember thinking, like, that's an unbelievable statement for a county commissioner to be making.
But an honest one. I mean, truthfully.
Yeah.
And in sometimes honesty is deflection. It's deflection sometimes, like, oh, couldn't do anything about it. Sorry about your luck. But I think Commissioner Hurd's statement was more awareness for people. I mean, I can't speak for her, but
without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, but it really is unfortunate, because I do think that's one of those things. I know there's a project coming up in the city of Stuart that will come before the commission. They're not going to be able to say no. We were able to push it off for a while, just trying to get a better plan from the developer. Like, that's great. You want to do this. It's your property. You do have some rights. Absolutely. But it doesn't need to be completely maxed out to the point where you're impacting your neighbors and the traffic flow and everything around you. And now the rumor is, when it comes before the city, it's going to be under that Senate Bill 102 Live Local. And then the Senate Bill 180, I mean, that's a whole hot mess in itself, because that could potentially be in perpetuity, because that's based on hurricane damage and what you need to reinvigorate to get a community back online. But it's all based on when the last storm was. And so there's just a lot of things that I feel like our representatives in Tallahassee, who will probably tell you that they did it with the best of intentions, it really does cater to a certain demographic who is not you and me.
Yeah. I think sometimes you can feel apathetic to certain things that go on. I mean, I think the Treasure Coast in general is kind of at an interesting point, because we're not Boca Raton yet, and we're not, we're not completely old Florida, but we're at what I think many people feel like is kind of a turning point. There's a lot of heads being butted over what direction should we go, or if there should be, what certain land use codes should look like, if there should be given variances, what responsible development really does look like. Do you have any thoughts on what that even means?
I do and I don't, because I've been told I'm not an expert by certain attorneys and some other people. But I will say I am an expert on my community and the landscape of it. And so I think for me, and this is where it comes when it comes to voting, there's some people that are running for office locally, statewide, beyond, that I don't care for personally. I really don't. Like, if we were going to sit down and have a beer, nope, not going to happen. We're not going to have dinner together. We're not buddies. But I respect the fact that your decision making goes beyond what I want, right? Like, if you're going to do things that are for my community, regardless of how I personally benefit, that to me is more responsible than growth and land use, because I think they're all kind of tied together, because you're looking at it more holistically. You're not looking at it from this one project. So like, if we look at Indiantown and what's happening right now with the data centers, for example, there's a lot of people looking at it like, oh, it's job creation, or it's this, or it's this. And you're not looking at the impact of, what about your neighbors, right? Like, what about the people who are growing food, whether it's agriculture or livestock? What about the people who recently moved into Terra-Lago, where you paid a lot of money to move there and your aquifer is tapped out. Now you want to take all of this effort and use more water consumption for something that doesn't have any return on investment for your community. So when we're having conversations like that, that to me is a little bit more meaningful than things about responsible growth, because I think they're all tied in together. I don't think you can isolate one thing or another when it comes to the overall health of the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right there, because a lot of times people will talk about development that is good or development that is bad. Like, if you build a big cube smart on US 1, that's bad. And then if you build like just a single family home on an acre, that's good. And I guess like the question is, what does it even mean? Because to some people it might mean, hey, I just need like a little break in this one land use code. It's no big deal, small. And to some people it's 30 units an acre on ocean. And so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that maybe people don't agree with, but I think one thing that we do agree on is some of the resources and community assets that we want to be available 5 years, 10 years. I've got 4 kids, and I want my kids to grow up, being able to eat fish out of the water. I want them to be able
Right.
to maybe
Yeah.
buy a home someday. So there's a lot of things that I think we agree on, but I think there's a lot in the middle that people might not. There might be some butting of heads.
Yeah, but I completely appreciate that statement, but I would also argue that people need to get involved before it affects them, right? Like a lot of
Yeah.
the conversations I have with people are, and I'm happy to have them because I wasn't this way until I was affected. So I'm not trying to be hypocritical about it. But people, when things are being shared online, through whatever media is available, people tend to not care, like with most things, until they're personally affected or afflicted. And I get it, right? Like you're living your life, you've got your own things going on, you're just trying to survive. But at some point, it's going to affect you. So, for example, like some of the developments that are happening, when we're annexing in land from the county to the city of Stuart or from the county to the village of Indiantown, and we're removing the oversight that the county has, the county could theoretically fight back and say, no, I don't approve this
Right.
annexation. But when you annex in, you're doing it strategically. You're not doing it for the purposes of, you want to make the city a bigger place. No, you're doing it because you get more latitude when it comes to building. So you get a greater density, you get smaller buffers, you get a higher height limit. So these aren't isolated thoughts or decisions that these developers have. For a while with a certain commission that we had, they knew if I annex land, I was going to get the maximum approved. No questions asked. You're going to change my land use. You're going to let me build what I want to build. Now all of a sudden you're impacting people and it's in other people's backyards. But to your first question, to your point, people don't know that that's what's happening. They just see this happening and they're just mad. Like, when did this CubeSmart get approved? Why is it in my backyard? Well, it's annexed in and then it got approved. And so my hope for our community is really that just people are aware of what's happening. And you're not going to love every project and you're not going to hate every project, but it's going to impact you in some way, whether it's the school that your kid attends, whether it's how long you sit in traffic, your water usage. As we're in a drought, how often can you water your lawn because of how many people are now using that same water availability? There's a lot of things that play into it. It's not any one isolated thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, because as much as I hate to say it, there's a lot of people who live here might want certain things out of this community, and certain things might be very important to them, but unfortunately there are people who can profit off of what we have here, and they might live 1,000 miles away, 2,000 miles away,
Right.
and as long as they can get a rubber stamp and they're good, and they can sell that off to some private equity firm or what have you, then they're not too worried about the strains on the water system. They're not too worried about really anything else that goes on from there. I'm in your eyes, because so you had started Save as kind of environmental, is that right?
I mean, it was more about, so for the land use change that happened in my case, There were
Right.
10 wetlands, of which 6 were viable. It was 49 plus acres. There were a lot of nuance to the
Okay.
effort. And
Okay.
a lot of it was because that property was low density residential when it was annexed in, and what it was
Mhm.
approved for was anything but. So it was
Got it.
more about the overall environmental impact, which encompassed traffic and some other things. Yeah.
Okay, because one of my questions or one of my thoughts while we were talking was balancing some of these things, caring for our environment and what we have here, and balancing that with a lot of hot topic items, especially for young people, like affordable housing, like jobs, like a lot of these things that um, people might see growth or development, those words are a good thing, and then balancing that with trying to take care of the resources we have. And I thought about that when you had mentioned Indian Town, because there are
Mhm.
certain areas around us on the Treasure Coast where they do want to grow, they want to see some growth, and I guess there's obviously growing pains with that, but I guess my thought is, how do you balance that, especially in Martin County? Mostly, how do you balance that with respecting the assets and the environmental benefits that we
Yeah.
can enjoy or have
So
enjoyed?
what Yeah. So what really frustrates me personally is when a developer comes in and says, "Oh, but I'm going to give you a park." Well, okay.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
gracious of you for giving me the park. You're so magnanimous. Thank you so much. But or saying like, I'm going to give you a retention pond because I'm going to cover up these wetlands, and the two are not the same, right? Like
Oh, sure.
wetlands are a natural filtration system that help stormwater management. So by the time it gets to the estuary, we're a little bit better off than we would be with a retention pond. And now you're putting in a man-made baffle to
Yeah.
process that stormwater. Like the two are not the same. And
Yeah.
so there is a balance. And if we had commissioners who were a little bit more thoughtful about the long-term impact of something, I think we would be making better decisions for the community as a whole. So while you're building this retention pond and construction runoff is happening, and now in the swale across the highway, you've got unfiltered construction water that has no cleansing mechanism that is now going into the river. Like these are very short-sighted decisions. And any comment by any staff or any commissioner that says it will be fixed by the time the project is finished is unacceptable. We shouldn't have
Yeah.
to do any kind of trade-off because you think by the time you're finished with something, it will be okay. Damage is being done from the moment that ground is broken and that water is not being treated properly, whether naturally or man-made, and going into our estuary. Like we can't compound a problem and then say, oh, it'll be fine.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I think that's a lot of times people will, you get a park, or if you're trying to kind of replicate what something does. I mean, you see that with Lake Okeechobee, obviously. It's like, trying to fix a problem that was created. Um,
Right,
you run into some interesting, you're not going to be able to re-engineer Mother Earth, so you kind of
right.
run into some ongoing roadblocks there. What do you think? I mean, what are some recent? Let me start here. In like 10 or 20 years, what would you like to see Martin County looking like?
Well, I think if we were smart, we would continue to differentiate. I mean, we always talk about the Martin County difference, and pretty soon we're going to be no different. So I think for Martin County, I think it would be amazing, although it's probably not going to happen. I think it would be amazing if we were able to retain something that made us different from the rest of the state. Because at the rate things are going, if you were going to extrapolate what's happening to the north of us and the south of us, we're just going to be one big community, right? Like you're
Right.
not going to be able to tell the difference. And right now, when you leave St. Lucie County and you come into Martin, you're like, the buildings are a little shorter, there's a
Mhm.
little more green space. Same with coming from the south. And wouldn't it be great if 10 to 20 years from now, that's why people continue to come here, whether they move here or they visit here. It's because we offer something. I mean, otherwise, why bother visiting Martin County if we have nothing to offer? If you're everything to everyone, you are nothing to no one.
Yeah.
So, why would we not want to differentiate ourselves and make us so that we are that destination of what could be as close to natural Florida as possible on the coast and offer something so that we're not competing with the mass of humanity? Like, we shouldn't, I mean, Abacoa is great and it serves a purpose, but not every place needs to be Abacoa.
Yeah.
And I would say the same about Boca. I mean, Fort Pierce has such unique character and amazing character. When we're going in and we're building marinas and we're making so many changes to what's happening up there, we're changing the character and the personality of why people are there to begin with. And to me, it doesn't make any sense why we would want to be this homogenous strip from south to north where we offer nothing special.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, even each city individually, like if you hop from Hobe Sound to Stewart to Jensen Beach to if you hop up to Fort Pierce, you go all the way. I mean, as you go, there is so much there's something that you can feel that's different. And it's something that you really don't get anywhere else. Is there anything else? We're kind of running out of time. Is there anything else that you feel is important to cover that we haven't touched on?
No, I'm grateful for the community for being involved. I thought the questions that were asked at Tuesday's candidate forum were amazing. I asked none, just so everybody is aware. Not one of those questions came from me. So I love that our community is paying attention and they're participating in the process, right? And I just want people to be a part of the process. I want them to come out and vote on August 18th. And then again in the general election. I think it's important that people's voices be heard. You can't complain if you didn't vote. And I absolutely love that we have more people that are participating right now.
That's awesome. Well, Robin, I appreciate you talking with me. I'll put the link to Casey Ingram's video. It's on her YouTube or something, but I'll post it whenever I publish this. So maybe people can click over and see some of the conversation there. But really, I appreciate your time. It was fun to talk with you and get a little more of an idea of what you do and where your head's at.
Yeah, well, thank you for the time and the opportunity. I really do appreciate it. And thanks for all that you do for helping educate people.
Oh, my pleasure. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Current by treasurecoast.com. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Follow us on social media or visit treasurecoast.com for local events, tips, and news. Have a guest or topic you'd love to hear on the show? Let us know at treasurecoast.com. Until next time, keep riding the current and enjoying